In the DAW with Covex. And do check out our podcast, Behind the DAW, for the more philosophical, artistic, emotional side of music, and link below for the Bloom EP sample pack made by Covex. But this is In the DAW, so let's go in the DAW.
The thing that really caught my attention is like around the middle of the track where you have the two vocals going on, where you have the girl vocal and the male vocal. Is that your vocal?
Yeah, it's my vocal.
Can we go into it and see how you process both of those? Because I kind of felt like the girl's vocal was right up in the front and then yours was like behind her, but like on both sides.
You're absolutely right. Here's her vocals. Every time I like record other people's vocals, I just do tons and tons of takes, no matter what. Like I don't just stick with doing 3 takes. I'll just do as many as it takes to get that one word right. I usually have 2 or 3 vocal layers. So with this first layer I have on this verse, I'm using a tiny bit of auto-tune. I'm using the Haas effect on simple delay. Turn up the millisecond thing here, slightly delayed on the left and right, and then turn up the dry wet to like 27%.
For those who are watching and don't know what the Haas effect is, basically what it is that you have your 2 sources that are giving you audio information, but one is slightly delaying one side, and this creates the effect that it's wider.
Exactly. And then slight reverb. I don't usually go too crazy with the reverb. I just have like a 2-second delay time and 30% dry wet. I don't like super shimmery reverb on vocals, so I usually like dial it back a little bit towards the mid end, which is what I'm doing here on the reverb. So it's not completely in the highs, so it doesn't interfere with a lot of frequencies that I have going on in the track already. The first track will be like the very center, like this will be the main track. And then the second track below it is kind of just like the background. It's much quieter and it has more Haas effect. So it basically fills up the entire stereo width with just this one vocal. And I've done a lot of like processing in the past where I'll like do 3 different takes and pan one completely left, one completely right, and then one completely center. But it just produces like a super weird wide sound that I don't really want. And the more I've been listening to like pop music too, I've noticed that there's a center vocal and the others are kind of like in the back. This is like the first song that I've actually tried this technique on, but it works really well. Tiny bit of auto-tune with this free M-Auto.
You said it was free?
Yep, it's by Melodic Production, that's it. So yeah, you can just go to their website. I think it's still available, and you can download all of their free plugins. And their pitch shift is what I've been using for like 4 years. Yeah, it works really well. It's free, whatever.
With the M-Auto pitch, do you feel that if you push it too hard, all of a sudden you start hearing artifacts, kind of like how you do in Atari's Auto-Tune or like in Melodyne? Do you know what I mean? Or can you press it pretty hard?
You'll definitely hear artifacts. I feel like you'll hear that in any auto-tune though. Like you can't last an auto-tune without decreasing the quality. I don't know, maybe there's an auto-tune out there that doesn't do that. When you blast this one, it does not sound good. It just sounds like a really deep version of Kanye West. Yeah. So yeah, I just keep it on like a little bit below half with this depth and speed here. I just boost the dry wet all the way up on the second one.
Oh, it's hard to begin again from a love that's rooted in.
So again, it's not as strong as the first one vocal-wise, but it still has the same pitches and everything like that. Of course, there's like a lot of warping going on too, just so they stay together and they're aligned.
With your vocal on this, let's go ahead and check that out really quick.
When I listened through it, I was not too happy with my vocals and how they sounded. I just wasn't like giving it my all for this take, but layering it with Anna's vocals, it sounded great. Since my vocals are kind of in the back and they produce that like crispy sound along with her vocals, it sounded great. So yeah, there is a lot of auto-tune with my vocals, just fair warning.
Oh, it's hard to begin again from a love.
That was the right side. With my vocals, I'm panning them left and right. And then I have a middle take as well. It's a similar processing as I'm doing it again, just auto-tune on the right side, auto-tune on the left side. And then with the middle, this is something new I've tried, but I've heard a lot of people do it before too. Doing a lot of distortion in the middle take. So I just used FabFilter's Saturn preset here, which is called Boutique. It makes this really crispy sound that I liked when I listened to it.
Tangled up in the garden of...
My vocals provide like kind of like a crispy sound along with hers. And again, my vocals didn't need to be as strong as Anna's just because she's carrying the weight on this.
Tangled up in the garden of...
Unless you like the T-Pain Future Lil Yachty effect, you know, you want just a super hardcore auto-tuned vocal.
Doctors, patients, hospitals, wasting money.
If you don't want that, if you want a very transparent, very natural vocal, but you do want to correct some pitches, what people will do is get that middle take and make it very transparent, make it so people can't recognize that you're auto-tuning it or melodizing it or whatever, right? But then anything that's supporting that vocal, you know, any backgrounds like you were showing here, or vocals to the sides or in the back or wherever you want to place them, you can auto-tune the crap out of them. You can make them Lil Yachty, Future, T-Pain as much as you want, because most people aren't going to notice that if it's in the back, but it's still going to give that crisp, in-tune feeling. When I listened to your song, I didn't think that you had barely any auto-tune at all, but now listening to this, okay, now, yeah, I can see that.
You can hear it too. I mean, I wish I had Melodyne. I still have yet to download it. Like, if I had Melodyne, I'd use that instead.
I was going to ask two things. One about the compression, which I suppose you'll dive into now. The second thing, just to confirm for those who may not have seen it before, am I right in saying you've got literally two different recordings, or even three? So one recording on the left, one on the right, and then one in the center?
Yep, with my vocals it is. There's 3 different takes of me singing the same thing, and one is panned not completely right and not completely left. It's just 30% right, 30% left. Having that stereo width is important. So with like the overall processing, this track was super difficult to process for some reason. I just had a pretty hard time EQing everything and getting everything to sound great. First things first, on this main vocal channel, cut out the lows, of course, around 186. Anna has a very particular voice that I haven't really worked with other people being in electronic music. Like, she has a very low, kind of robust voice, which you don't hear a lot. I had to cut out a lot of this low mid range here just to leave room for the other tracks. Then I had to do like a big dip here at 2000 hertz.
If you hover over that node that you have at the 2000, that little headphone, have you used that before?
Yeah. And then after that, some light compression with 2:1 ratio.
I see that you're using the Live 8 compressor. Is there a reason why you're using that over the Live 9?
With this kind of compression, no. Regular compressing, but with sidechain compression, I noticed that the Live 8 compressor is way better than 9. You can always just switch to upgrade. You can just upgrade it right there.
FF1 mode, which I don't know the technical reason, but if you compare, say, FF1 mode in Ableton Live 8 to Ableton Live 9, especially for heavy sidechain compression, it does generally sound a bit better.
I've added a glue compressor just to make everything a little thicker, I guess. I'm not doing anything too heavy. And then this multi-band dynamics, this is something that I just tried on this track too. I heard Stay Loose talking about only using a multi-band dynamic for EQing his vocals. Even though I EQ'd my vocals, I just decided to try this out anyways. This is a bunch of trial and error. Boosted the highs right here, compressed the highs as well. Without it, it just doesn't sound as like forefront. It's almost like an OTT compressor, but just not as drastic, I guess. The sidechain compressor here linked to the Ghost channel that I have. It's just like a kick sound that I have on a 4-on-the-4 pattern. I do that with all my tracks. Then I have this gain knob boosting the vocals slightly after the first verse here, just because I wanted the very first verse to be a little quieter than the second one. Not a huge difference. And then I have FabFilter's de-esser, which is super crucial. And then with me, I think it's the same exact stuff, just like different EQing.
So on the little vocal bit right before the second drop, are you processing that differently, or is it just the vocal but without the side bits? Definitely sounded different and a lot more mono.
So that is completely mono on both of our tracks. So I have the vocals set up in like different groups just because there is a little tiny bits of different processing in each channel. This line before the drop.
I didn't need you like you needed me. I didn't need you like you needed me.
So I just wanted it to be like completely dry. So it'd be like a huge difference coming from the super echoey delayed bridge part here, and then just suck it all out and then have like a super distorted mono vocal here. So I just used like the Saturn different preset, and I just boosted the drive on her vocal.
I didn't need you like you needed me.
I just wanted it to be like super natural sounding, I guess, like not a lot of electronics going on into it. You would think there's an auto tune on it. I just wanted it to sound like it was coming from the mic and like you were there listening to it. And then layered with my vocal, I'm doing the same thing with mine, just same distortion, a little bit auto tune.
I didn't need need you like you needed me. I didn't need you like you needed me.
Kind of moving away from the vocals for a minute, but I'm really intrigued with your melodic composition. The things I've been hearing come from you lately, especially with your Bloom EP, which, by the way, Bloom EP is out now. It's amazing. But on the Bloom EP is as well as, you know, songs like Extraordinary Lies, right?
Just Ordinary Lies, yeah.
Or just Ordinary Lies.
Not extra.
So songs like Ordinary Lies, the melodic part of it is so gorgeous. And so I'd love to know your process of writing the melodic part. What do you do to come up with such a beautiful melodic composition?
Well, for Ordinary Lies, I actually did not do the melodic part. That was all Gonzalo. I was doing most of the percussion actually in that track. He did a lot of the piano. But yeah, for my most recent stuff, I go to school for music business. And we have like classes that teach us composition and arrangement and all that stuff. So I've been taking a lot of those concepts and putting them into my music. And for this track in particular, every track of mine, I always start with a key. I just mess around on my piano with different keys and see which one I like. For this track in particular, I knew I wanted vocals on it, and I knew I wanted my vocals too. So I stuck with a key that fits my vocal range, which is B flat minor. That's like my go-to key. I have a lot of songs in that. I'll start noodling around on the piano until I find like a cool melody inside that key. So before I even made the chords, I came up with this simple melody here with the piano. Everything's frozen, but I just used a piano, typed away on my piano. I didn't have an idea in mind before I started messing around. I just started noodling. So here's the thing that I came up with. After I played that, I was like, that's the one. It just sounded so otherworldly, I guess. I started this track like right after I opened for Bonobo, like the day after. So I was like really, really, really inspired by him and his musical compositions. Like he has really strong melodies in all his tracks. So I just wanted like a really strong thing going throughout the entire piece. This melody just repeats throughout the entire song. After that, I think for this song, I started with the bass, I believe, the sub. Again, it's just me noodling around. There's not a lot of theory going on in my brain when I do this. Like, I just write something that I think sounds cool. I don't really follow any rules, just kind of go with the flow. Again, noodle around on piano.
So you started with your melody and then moved to your sub and then moved to your chords?
I think so. After you get the sub done, then you have like the root note for all your chords. So I believe I just like copied all of these notes here from the sub and then moved it to a piano and then just started drawing in notes after that. I'm not honestly too familiar with theory. I just go. I just write what sounds good.
Do you typically quantize all your MIDI for pretty much everything, or do you ever have some things unquantized?
The main elements I will quantize because if they're following the ghost sidechain, it sounds weird if it's like a slight millisecond off, like it needs to be exactly on beat for it to really have that pumping effect. In the verses here in my piano, I didn't quantize this little bit just because it didn't have that sidechain on. It didn't need to follow a certain pumping rhythm. The second note here is just a slight millisecond off. Some of the notes are exactly on. It kind of just depends. If you want a more natural sound, then you can unquantize it. Yeah, I've just noticed in the past that it doesn't sound great with like a kick and a sidechain if it's not.
Concerning like the piano that you're using, what is that piano that you're using?
Grandeur on Contact. It came with Complete.
Which is a beautiful, 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 beautiful piano.
But yeah, one thing I noticed really cool with the piano is putting an erosion effect on. Boosted the width on this wide noise set right here and just moved around the amount. So it created this like whooshing sound. Just kidding. I didn't do it on the piano. But you hear that wispy sound? Like without it. Just sounded like super lo-fi to me, like Tycho-y. I've been using a lot of noise stuff recently, like white noise, just on like Contact or Massive Serum, just a lot of a lot of noise. It creates this like really natural analog-ish sound.
I see a corpus in there. What are you doing with the corpus?
Completely messed around with this. Not too familiar with the plugin, but it came up with like a cool sound. I think I just modulated the amount here and the decay, I guess. So it just created this like super warbly sound that I wanted in the bridge. I just wanted the piano to sound different in this section instead of having the same sound because it's at the very forefront of the mix. So yeah, I'm just like moving around the decay. I guess the amount stays pretty consistent. It just created a new sound that you can't achieve with any other plugin, really.
You have two Valhalla return tracks. Are they different reverbs or just the same reverb but different settings?
Right Hall, 2 seconds, 30-second mix. Again, I'm cutting out the highs because I don't like that high-end reverb sound unless it's like a sweep or something like that. High cut and then low cut. I don't want any lows in the reverb either. So that's the first one. This reverb is super high mix ambient sounding. The third return track is a ping pong, which I use for the vocals to create like an echo effect after each line.
I noticed you didn't all the different vocal layers. I don't remember you always cutting the really low frequencies. I've heard kind of two schools of thought whether or not you should or shouldn't cut the low frequencies. Some people saying if you cut those really low, say sub 60, 70 hertz frequencies, it clears up room for the bass, but other people saying those low frequencies make it sound more real. Was that a conscious decision to leave the low frequencies in sometimes, or?
I actually don't think I left the low frequencies.
Actually, you may have cut them out further down the processing chain.
I don't really leave in the low frequencies on vocals unless like there's no other low end sound. Unless it's like an acoustic song that I need that full vocal sound, I'll leave it in. If I have like a sub or another bass sound, I'll definitely cut it out just so the frequencies don't compete. And with my vocals, they're a little on the lower end, and so are Anna's. I'm cutting out at 220 on my vocals, and then I'm cutting Anna's at 186. The lows are gone, just so it doesn't compete with the sub.
If you woke up tomorrow and everyone forgot about this song, and you wanted to re-release this song, would there be anything that you would want to change about it before you release it again?
Yeah, I think I'd want to work on my vocals more. I want to be more happy with this. I did not feel too solid with my vocals, but again, like you can't notice it in the full track. It's just like a personal thing for me. Pretty much it. I think the track came out pretty well.
What did you find most difficult on this track? Was it processing all those different vocal layers, or the arrangement, or the melodies? Or?
Yeah, it was definitely the vocals. The vocals was the hardest part, especially in this bridge section here. We had more takes, I think like 12 different takes of this bridge section. I had to go through and choose which line sounded better than the other and continuously go through and warp each vocal to line up with the other. And it only ended up being 2 tracks. It was a lot of work going through each vocal, which I've never experienced before, and just finding the best one. And yeah, the processing was pretty tricky on this track. It just sounded, my mic isn't that great. Like it's on the cheaper end. I just have the AT2020, so it was hard to get a really well-rounded full sound out of the vocals. But I think I made it work with all the EQing processing going on here.
We definitely live in the era where you don't need a super amazing microphone to sound super amazing.
You can make anything work.
We had Diamond Eyes on here. How much did your mic cost, by the way?
$100.
So he has one that's very similar.
Always done vocals myself, and I use the Audio Technica 2035. That's literally the microphone I use for everything.
Just a little, we'll meet right here in the middle ground is where we'll stand.
This is the day and age where I think that mic selection isn't necessarily the most important thing. I think knowing how to use your plugins properly and how to process your vocals properly. Because if you can process your vocals properly and make them sound good on a crap mic, you can make them sound good on any mic. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I think there are certain benefits to other mics though. Like there's a reason some of them are like $2,000. You know? I think it's just like the overall sound. Like I just got a Blue microphone a couple days ago, double the amount of money as the AT2020. There's a huge difference in sound. It produces such like a fuller sound compared to the AT2020.
Final portion to this is, would you like our feedback on your track?
Yeah, do it.
All right.
Rip it apart.
Something that I noticed that was kind of weird, right? And now that I'm looking at this, now I don't know if I should say weird. Weird isn't the right word. Out of the ordinary? That seems a little bit more gentle. Something that was a little bit out of the ordinary. And now that I'm looking at your project, this confirms it. So right there where it says bridge/cinematic vocal chops.
Yeah.
I felt like that was a little long. It's definitely the longest portion of the entire song, you know, looking at everything else. Why did you do that, just out of curiosity?
I have always been really into cinematic stuff. It's kind of like how I started in melodic music. I have just loved writing super big cinematic scores, I guess. I like the continuous build of instruments too. So yeah, in this song, I just wanted to have a break from the high energy and to just let that free, that feeling that I wanted out of this track free. I do agree, I could have shortened it probably by half. Like I could have just chopped this entire section off. But yeah, I guess it's just like a creative decision.
Where do you record your vocals? Do you record them in Ableton or do you record them in another DAW?
In Ableton.
In Ableton, okay.
Yeah.
How do you feel like the vocal comping process is in Ableton? You know what I mean? Going in, recording a bunch of takes, then like basically comping them all together to make them sound the best. How do you feel about that?
Looking at Logic, especially, seeing other of my friends do vocals in Logic, there's no comparison to it. Their way of doing the multi-tracking and looping over the same vocal and comping each vocal it's the best way to do it. I was really hoping Ableton 10 would incorporate that feature. They incorporated everything else, but not that. Like, that was the one thing it's missing.
Yeah, for those who don't know what he's talking about, and really quick while I'm explaining this, I'll include a video explanation down on the screen. But basically what he's talking about is vocal comping is basically if you have 3 takes and you like the beginning of the first one, the middle of the second one, and the end of the third one, you can go in, chop out everything, and basically make a Frankenstein version of that vocal take, taking the best parts and making it seem as one. So in Logic, it's very, very simple because it gives you a vocal comping tool where you can go in and you basically highlight certain parts of the vocal. I like this part in this take, I like this part in this take, so on and so forth. And it basically crossfades everything for you and instantaneously gives you a full take. So it makes it very easy. Whereas Ableton, you know, you'll have to go in and record all of them, manually chop them out, try and piece them all together. And, you know, for some people, this doesn't bother them. For you, how you were saying, like you had a crap ton of vocal takes, that could be a huge hours saving process.
Probably spent 3 entire days working on the vocals. It was not fun.
So this is a question that I've been wondering. As far as I know, Logic is the only thing that can do that. Unless, you know, is there a third-party plugin? Is there another DAW? I'm more concerned, is there a third-party plugin that can do it? Because if there is, I'm literally going to delete Logic off my computer right now. I respect people who use Logic, but, you know, if someone knows that, a plugin that does that, so I don't have to go use Logic, please comment it, link it, do something. But other than that, it was a fantastic song. I actually really, really loved it.
2 things. Strange that Wyatt, you mentioned that you wanted the minute 2 to minute 3 to be a little bit shorter, because my main feedback was going to be I'd quite like a 6 or 7 minute version of this track with like a 1.5 minute, 2 minute middle section. That almost illustrates how people's tastes and expectations almost guide how they hear the track. So for me, some of my favorite tracks of this style are 6 or 7 minute tracks, even though they're not as popular. So certainly not over the last few years, simply because it's almost like if you look at the chorus sections, there's been like the emotional payoff for everything that's been kind of not happening or kind of happening differently in between. I find almost the longer you can sustain the track before the chorus starts, it almost feels better when the chorus eventually does kick in. Although it's definitely interesting that Wyatt, you almost felt the opposite, which may be useful for people to know that people's expectations, almost depending on the genre and stuff, might affect what arrangement is best. Not that I thought the arrangement was bad, it was just because I know most arrangements nowadays are this sort of length and stuff. Yeah, purely to my own taste, I do like those longer tracks too.
It's a cool thing to keep in mind, especially in like progressive house music, like Lane 8. Like that dude does the wildest verses. Like there's such long build-ups, and then the chorus, yeah, you're right, it's just like a massive payoff. Like you feel awesome when a chorus hits. It just builds the energy consistently. That's a cool idea though. Maybe I could do like a extended play and a radio version of this.
I feel like you could almost write the longer one and it wouldn't take more than an hour or 2 just to like chop out sections and rearrange a few bits, and you'd have your shorter one. Second thing, just a super minor thing, but like a bit of positive feedback. I really liked the bit right before I think bar 5 started, so like halfway through the very, very first section. It almost like disappeared and then came back, which I don't hear too many times, and it really consciously caught my ear in a way that I think is really, really important in the first section of the track. If you think about it, the first 4 bars is one bit of the track you know someone's going to listen to. So to capture their attention with something different or unique for whatever reason is really, really good. And yeah, certainly as simple as it was, yeah, the bit like I suppose at the end of bar 4 leading to bar 5 was really cool.
Thank you. I was really happy with the sound selection on this. Yeah, I was just really heavily inspired by Bonobo on this in particular. But he talks about his noise as being the most important part of the song. Like having unique noises like white noise or just ambient noise or any kind of noise is really important to fill the track frequencies up. For this first 4 bars, it's just a field recording of people talking, I think. Or no, that's just wind. But yeah, and then I layered that with me breathing into my trumpet, which is an interesting sound. And I messed around with the frequency on erosion to create that wisping effect that I was talking about earlier.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It came out pretty well. Yeah, it's just a super unique sound.
I really liked it.
Thank you.
My last little part that I have is more so, it doesn't necessarily have to do with the song. It's more so like your overall artist direction. So I'm curious because when you first started the Covex project, you were very sound design heavy and like neuro influenced, right? That was your direction.
Yep.
And you also are, for those who don't know, he is roommates with Frequent, which is super cool. So my question is now your musical direction is definitely not within that realm. And so I'm asking, I guess my question is, why is that? It's not a good or a bad thing. It's just, like why are you moving more in this direction than where you started? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, I was always into like more melodic stuff too. But I really, really, really enjoyed doing crazy sound design days. Like I spent hours and hours just on Mase making the weirdest sounds I could possibly make. It was really fun. And I think starting with that genre really helped with everything else because I kind of know how things work now. Like instead of starting on this melodic stuff and not being so sound design heavy, I wouldn't know as much about sound design in general if I didn't start with heavy sound design processing. So I think the reason I switched is because you couldn't really get like the full emotion out of a neuro track or like a dubstep track. Because to me, at least the past couple of years, it just sounds like sound to me. Like you can't really hear the feelings the producer is going through when they're writing a track or like the true emotion behind it. It was just a bunch of sounds. Like to me, that was my intake too. I mean, when I was making it, I was just doing it for fun. Like there wasn't a lot of emotion going into it. Whereas this more melodic stuff, like I can really pour all my energy into these tracks. Everything that I'm going through, lyric-wise or just melodic-wise, like when I come up with that melody, I'm just like, oh, that hits me really hard. That is exactly what I'm feeling right now. It's just a super emotional connection with this music. And that's why I switch, because I can feel it more than I can with bass heavy music.
I'm proud of you for doing that, because that is what music is supposed to be. It's supposed to be like the musical expression of your soul. It's supposed to be the audio version of your soul and of your feelings. And so if that is something, if you felt like kind of need to put the sound design to the side and more so focus on this kind of stuff to evoke that part of you, I'm proud of you for doing that.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool, man.
Thanks. It was an important thing. And yeah, like I said, like without starting with neuro, I would not know, I don't think I'd know as much about sound design as I do now. Like it has helped me immensely, especially with like percussion stuff. Like there were some heavy percussion elements in my neuro stuff that I still use today in my own productions. And I think that's kind of what makes my stuff unique, is like having that weird percussion in a lot of my stuff.
Brendan, Covex, Bell, thank you so much for coming on the show. Did you have a good time?
I did indeed. Thank you guys for having me.